Raiders are currently catching a field goal at Utah. Total sits at 57.5. Neither team has really played anybody, but both teams looked really good beating up on those nobodies.
Yeah, I'll correct you for a second here. Big 12:20 kickoff on Fox.
Got to get the ads in, right?
For sure, yeah. Obviously, an early start in Salt Lake. That's a 10:20 start local. We talked about it Sunday night. Utah does have a great home field advantage. I don't know how much that'll really be a factor just in that, but it might not be zero in that one. So obviously, it's really hard to grasp, as you mentioned, these two teams, wanting to give Utah a little bit less credit for that UCLA performance that we were so impressed by the crispness of the offense and really the team on both sides. And digging into the numbers, I found a couple concerning numbers from Texas Tech, actually, on the defense. So we noted they played an FCS opponent, Kent State, and then Oregon State, who's obviously very down after the dissolving of the Pac-12. Temporary dissolving. But they're in the middle of the pack in terms of sack percentage and EPA per play defense and against FBS foes, like I mentioned. Now, they do have a good pressure rate against those foes, but those aren't very good offensive lines. Kent State and Oregon State both have offensive line concerns. So they're just not converting that pressure into sacks as much as you'd kind of like, honestly. So the second concerning number comes from their offense. The Red Raiders are top 20 in third and fourth down success rate, but are 133rd out of 136 FBS teams in average third and down distance, meaning they are often in third and long, and they're performing quite well doing that. I think this is a major step up in class for them with the Utah defense. And mentioned with that pressure rate, the Utah is one of the best offensive lines in the country, consistently good defense. Something to watch for in that this game as well is Utah under Kyle Whittingham, historically good special teams. Their kicking situation's quite poor. So that's something to consider when betting this game as well. Market-wise, we've obviously seen some Texas Tech money coming it down from 4, I believe, on Sunday night when we did the show. There's 3.5 4s out there. Now you're just down to the flat 3. With Utah's home field advantage being one of the best, you're kind of saying Tech is equal or maybe the better team than Utah. I do disagree with that. I lean Utah here at the current market price, but it's not a bet I've placed yet.
Definitely agree. I like the Utes laying the 3 as well. From Utah, we go down to former Big 12 school, Oklahoma, in the Jackson Arnold Bowl. The Auburn Tigers are currently getting 6.5, but we are seeing pressure on that 6.5 as Oklahoma might move up to 7. And the total currently sits at 48.
Yeah, obviously fascinating game in the return of Jackson Arnold to Norman, not just a revenge game or whatever you want to call it, but he's also returning to Norman in this one. And his legs are going to be vital to this Auburn offense. And as I mentioned, I wish Michigan used Underwood more in the passing game or running game in that game against Oklahoma a few weeks back. We'll talk about that more when we break down that game as well. And just want to see how the Sooners defend that dynamic. The big matchup here is I like both defensive lines in this matchup. Now, Auburn does have a good offensive line unit, but the concern is the aforementioned Jackson Arnold. He tends to not help out his offensive line, and we've seen him turtle in these situations, running into sacks, not making good decisions, and he's not really taking advantage of his good weapons in the passing game right now. They're not making the kind of difference we thought they could earlier in the season. So you have 2 good run defenses. So you could see a ton of third and longs here with both quarterbacks. Again, we'd like Mateer, but we want to see him do this against an SEC schedule. Auburn's pass defense, we saw it get beat up by Sawyer Robinson and Baylor. But, what are Oklahoma's weapons on the passing game? We're going to see that in this step up in class here as well. So this kind of makes me think we're going to get some feeling out early process. I got to look to see if it's still available, but I kind of think I like the first half under. I know 23.5 was available earlier. Full game wise, I know there was some movement on the total earlier today, but otherwise not much movement there. And the side, it stayed right around 6.5 this week. I think it stays in that area. I don't know if we're going to get a 7, but I don't have a plan that. Just kind of leaning first half under here.
The Michigan Wolverines are currently laying 2.5 as they head to Lincoln, Nebraska. The total is 45.5. Bobby, what are you thinking here?
Sorry, lost my note for a second. Yeah, so Wolverines head coach Sharon Moore suspended again, and now this week he wasn't available to be at practice. He was ahead of the Central Michigan game last week. But one thing we saw, a big difference in that game, Bryce Underwood's legs. You've heard I heard this on other shows that might know more about the, kind of ins and outs of this, but Harbaugh and more kind of lean more in the don't run the quarterback kind of deal. And obviously with Poji, we saw that a little bit more last week with Underwood finally getting that element on the ground. And remember, we saw Cincinnati quarterback Brendan Sorsby succeed on the ground against Nebraska in week 1 in that game in Arrowhead. So Nebraska run defense outside of the top 100 in EPA per rush, despite not playing, Akron and Houston Christians in there
right.
In that one. And on the other side, we've seen Dylan Raiola grow a bit. I know the completions aren't down the field and he's checking down a little bit more. The ADOT's lower, but he's processing better. And Nebraska's offensive line has kept him clean. Now, Wink Martindale on the defensive side, he's been known to blitz a little bit, and that's when Raiola's turnover-worthy plays really kick up when he is blitzed and pressured. So it'll be interesting to see if that kind of brings back old habits, if you will. So market-wise, we've seen some small moves towards Michigan and a little bit bigger move towards the over in that game, which I kind of like that move earlier in the week. Not sure I'd play it now. I think it kind of gets expensive just because I think with the ADOT and Michigan just leaning on the run, it kind of gets harder once you get above 45 there. So I did think that was a solid move. If this ever gets to 3, I think you're going to see a buy on Nebraska just from numbers guys out there. Personally, I'm sitting this game out, though.
And our final big game breakdown of the week, Fighting Illini are currently catching 5.5 as they travel to Bloomington with a total of 52.5. This game could have some ramifications for possibly the Big Ten getting in the 4th school into the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think this is where game day should be, by the way. And this one, we're not even talking about the game day game this week, but I'm actually going to start with the market here. We've seen some early Indiana money, and I know it got up to 5.5. I saw a 6 flash earlier. So it's getting quite expensive. Again, what I find notable about this and what we mentioned was the AP, the popularity polls have Illinois as a top 10 team, but the market is clearly not rating them that. So when this is upset, if the Hoosiers pull off the win on Saturday, it's not that. And you kind of seeing the proof that, hey, no, the market agrees that Illinois is in the top 10 team. They're probably more closer to the top 25. Now, they might be a little bit higher in Indiana than I am, but that's just a general statement. But that kind of goes back to, when you look at the stat profiles of both these teams, we're still really not sure who they are just based on the opponents they've played. Obviously, like I said, Indiana's preseason affairs basically thus far, and Illinois really only has that matchup in Durham against Duke. Now, they benefited from 5 Duke turnovers in that game that we've mentioned before. In that game, Luke Altmaier, he was very efficient passing the ball, despite our concerns about the lack of the true number 1 target there. Now, one other note is he was sacked 4 times in that game by what I think is an underrated Duke offensive line, or defensive line, I should say. So it'll be interesting to see if Indiana can get after the passer here on this one. At the end of the day, this is a data point game. I just don't see an edge with either of these teams right now. It's a fact-finding game, not one I'm looking to bet. I know that's boring.
Moving on into our market mover segment. These are the 8 games that we think that you guys should know about as far as what has moved at least a point. And we think that, I don't know, I guess, Bobby, we got 8 games here. Could you walk us through these 8 games and tell us a little bit about them?
Yeah, ton of interesting moves this week. I'll kind of jump all over here on the board here. But first one that sticks out is obviously the North Texas move. Obviously, Army opened up as a 2.5-point favorite. There was one solo 3 out there, but that was more rogue. And we've seen North Texas flip favorite. Obviously, that's been a team that's been bought in the market a ton this year. And Army's been generally a sell after their loss to Tarleton State. Even though they had a good win against Kansas State a few weeks back as well. So that's been a move. That'll be an interesting thing to see if North Texas continue to take money. That was a team that took Saturday money last week that we kind of mentioned on Sunday. So it'll be interesting to see if this gets to 3 or not. USC was an early move. That one I agree with. Not less so on number size, but more of a matchup edge, I think, in that one. We mentioned Kansas, West Virginia, and the best bets earlier. That's ticked up as high as 14 at some points with some buyback. Love that situational spot there for the Jayhawks. Another interesting one is the look ahead spot with Arkansas and Memphis. Arkansas obviously has Notre Dame coming to town next week, but we've seen the Razorbacks take some action through the 7 in that one. So that's an interesting move there that is, quite frankly, I agree with. I just don't like this Memphis team, but probably going to see a lot of points there as well. And then weeknight game, continued sell of Oklahoma State, 14.5 to 11.5 with Tulsa in what's a regional rivalry game. You know, Tulsa really cares about that one.
Before we get into best bets, guys, if you don't mind, go ahead and give us a like and subscribe. It not only lets Bobby know, though, that our content is worthwhile, it also kind of helps you out because then the algorithm knows that, hey, this guy likes betting content, and it also suggests you more betting content from other good quality creators. We are currently 2-1 last week on our best bets, 5-5 for the season. Quick best bet recap. We gave you Kansas minus 11.5. It's currently up to 12.5, 13. We also gave you the under 42.5 in Troy Buffalo. We also gave you Mississippi State laying 22.5. We've kind of seen some market disagreement, but that's all right. We still believe a lot in cowbell. For this week, we have Tulane catching catching 12.5 at Oxford. Bobby, could you tell us about this one?
Yeah, and just a note on this one, really shop around. I know we were discussing pre-podcast of what number to kind of give out. Like FanDuel has 11.5, but DraftKings has 13.5. A couple offshores flat 13. So we thought 12.5 was a good median point to kind of give out here for the podcast, one that we think everyone can should be able to get here. So with Tulane, obviously a team that's impressed this year. Quite frankly, wasn't sure what this team would look like down in the quarterback position. But honestly, Retzlaff's performed way better than I thought, and you're kind of maybe thinking he's not as much of a fluke as you thought he was now. And Tulane is a really good team as far as the trenches, as far as the G5 level, and we've really seen that Ole Miss defense take an enormous step back from last year. Obviously, you have the quarterback situation with Ole Miss as well, with Austin Simmons. He should play, but we know Lane isn't trustworthy with the injury reports. And Trinidad Chambliss performed good against Arkansas, but let's see. Honestly, the Tulane defense is way better than Arkansas, so I think that's actually a step up in class. So I think Tulane can definitely stay within the number here. So we like the green wave to keep it close in Oxford on Saturday.
You can follow Bobby on X at BobbyDigital2. You can follow the show at CFB900. We will be back here on Sunday night to recap everything that happened in week 4 and also look ahead to week 5. Until then, wishing you guys all the best of luck on this Saturday's best bets. Adios.